rolling?
Amazing.
Yay!
Okay.
Welcome back, Double Teamed fam. How are we doing today? So, we brought our beloved and trusted Nadège to our episode today. It's been a moment. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you two doing?
Good.
My
I'm
favorite
so happy you're here.
Libras, honestly.
My favorite Sagittarius.
Oh.
And my mom's a Sagittarius. Okay, we're going to call
My mom's a Libra, though.
Oh, really?
So
Perfect.
we're in alignment. It's fine.
I like it. I like
Moms don't listen to this episode. Thanks.
it. No. I did tell my mom not to listen to the podcast. I
Yeah.
don't think she does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think she
She
wants
just
to.
supports from afar.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
she's just like,
beautiful.
yeah, y'all are doing great, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we brought Nadège on today because I wanted to talk about food and sex. But not in like the kinky way, like we're gonna turn your vagina into a burrito. More like the correlation between the two, or like the relationship. I don't know.
Yeah. And also food versus sex, which I liked because people like have opinions on it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, what did your viewers say? Because you said you had asked a couple viewers like food versus sex or friends, right?
I did ask friends. I'd ask my partners. I'm trying to think. So C said food is more constant pleasure, but sex is like peak pleasure. Okay, let me actually, for our listeners, the question is, which brings you more pleasure, food or sex?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I got to thinking about one time, because I remember I saw a TikTok and the guy was like, oh, sex is just like something you do just to get it done, and then that's it. And then I remember one time I sat to eat, and then I was like, I am just doing this because I need to fuel my body, and like that's it. Like it doesn't really bring me a lot of pleasure. Like I don't cook for pleasure, I cook to like feed my body. So then I was like, that's kind of an interesting thing. And so then I asked you about it, and you're like, oh, it's a great topic. And I remember on the last one, you mentioned how like it's something that you have people journal about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, I just kind of, I got to thinking about it, and then I started asking. So that's what C had said. Calvin said he gets more pleasure from food. And I didn't take that personally because, you know, we have bomb sex.
He must be having really good food.
I know. And he's also like super into nutrition just because like, he's very into like his body, and like he looks like a Greek god. Anyways, so he said food. And then I asked another guy who I had gone on a date with and because he's always going to restaurants all the time. He's big on food, and he's like, oh, food,
me.
1,000%. Yeah. And I was just thinking, I'm like, for me, it's definitely sex. So it was just like, as I was kind of getting the responses, I was like, this is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think for me it's equal because like
Really?
a good meal is incredible, and like I love food. But when sex, like I really loved what your first partner said, like sex is peak pleasure because like when you come really good, there is nothing like it in this world. So, but it's true. And I think it also is on a spectrum because some meals, like when they're horrible, you get food poisoning. I mean, sex can make you sick too. It's really interesting. I loved this topic because food and sex are so similar, not just in the ways we enjoy pleasure, but the ways we restrict pleasure. Like diet culture and food. It's like food, so much about food is taking it away from you. Don't indulge too much. You know, like what is that horrible saying? A minute on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. Like we have these.
Yeah.
So, but with sex, like it's also very similar. Like don't have too much, you're a slut. Don't have too little, you're not informed or knowledgeable or like an adult.
prude. Yeah,
you're,
exactly.
You know, and the whole thing. So it's, but what about you? Because we haven't heard from Cami yet.
Oh, yeah.
Food or sex?
Oh, I was thinking the same because, like, for example, when we were in Spain, we went to this one restaurant that had like some of the most orgasmic food I've ever had.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I was like, this is the best thing to go in my mouth ever. Right?
Yeah.
You know, but then like I have like sexual experiences and orgasms that make me think I'm like, this is all I need in life to like ever like enjoy anything. Right?
Yeah.
So for me, it just kind of depends on the mood.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to say, I remember I did ask one of our guests that we had recently. And do you remember which one he said was his choice? But I did like something he said. He was like, I don't like this binary. I'm like, I know, but just go along with it because I'm doing a
I feel
project
like that was
here.
low-key my answer, like everything, all of it.
Exactly.
Don't restrict me.
Very Libra.
Yeah,
You know? Yeah.
for sure.
But I remember he said something that I really liked, and he was like, well, you know, food is like something that like you have to give your body like in order to live. So he was like, that's why he was like, I don't know about how I,
but I'd argue
can
that
conceptualize
sex is too, right?
That's what I was going to ask you. Is
that's
like, would
so
you
much
consider
of my work? Yeah, like if you look at the neuroscience of pleasure, like you need pleasure in order for your emotional system to process correctly in your brain. So if you're not experiencing enough pleasure, then you're not going to be able to process your feelings or communicate them. And there's parts of your brain, like gray matter, is just going to reduce. So actually, like experiencing pleasure, which does include food though, like it's not just sex, right? But experiencing pleasure is really healthy for you. And then there's all the research about masturbation extending your like life expectancy by years. So physical pleasure or food pleasure, I mean, I do think we need both to exist. And that's just up to you to define what that pleasure is or that sexual pleasure is.
That's what I was going to say. Is that why like people that diet a lot, or like if they are like abstinent, is that why they're not very happy? Or maybe, or they just get upset more. Like maybe they just can't.
I think that there is a lack of, like, restricting ourselves doesn't do us any favors, I think, with sex or with food, right? Like that's why like movements like the intuitive eating movement has been so big, because it's a way to eat and be healthy and recognize that being healthy has nothing to do with losing weight, and being sexy has nothing to do with losing weight. But then like we're up against these cultural ideas that tell us the exact opposite. But we have like similar restrictions with sex, but that also doesn't work, right? Because if you restrict yourself, then you're gonna binge and overindulge. You could overindulge sexually or with food, right? And then also kind of like what you were saying, like if you don't eat enough, I mean, hangry, that shit is, I get hangry. Like I'm a really nice person unless I haven't slept enough or I haven't eaten enough. And it is true. And like I do a lot of self-work, but like I can be a real bitch, and like there's not, what am I going to do about that? And so the same with pleasure. Like if you're restricting yourself from sexual pleasure and you're like not happy, I mean, then have some sexy time.
Yeah. And that doesn't have to be with someone else.
No, masturbation. Yeah,
exactly.
There's nothing I hate more than Nikki when she's hangry.
Oh,
that's what I was going to say.
It's like, it's bad.
It's really bad. That is
so
a side of me
bad.
no one should ever have to see.
I feel the same. Yeah.
And Cami has to see it the most often just because we spend so much time together by default. But I have said some ugly things.
Oh, yeah. All of my friends who've been friends with me for like 10 plus years know, they're just like, oh, are you hungry? Oh, okay. And like now I just get quiet. That's the way I deal with it. I'm just like, I'm not going to speak because I have nothing nice to say, and I won't have anything nice to say until I have a donut, and that's it. I love donuts.
I need to practice that discipline.
I went to Sidecar yesterday. And
What's Sidecar?
You've never been to Sidecar Donuts?
Oh
my God, you haven't been yet?
No.
Oh my God, it's like the best donut place in Los Angeles.
I had 2 of their chocolate donuts and it was so good. And I know I probably shouldn't have had 2, but I was like, you know what? Fuck it.
But see, no, you should have, because you wanted to.
Well, and that's the thing. When it comes to, like, for a long time, I kind of struggled with my relationship with food. And like I love dessert. I love pie, cake, cookies, donuts. Like I want all the sugar, right?
Yeah.
And when I was getting my master's and I was an events manager, I was stressed all the time. I ate, like, I think I would try to restrict myself and then binge. Like, it was just really bad, right?
Yeah.
And then came the pandemic and I was like, you know what? I got this. Like, I'm going to find a way to, like, have a healthy relationship with food. So I finally got there, right?
Oh.
And now it's like, I eat what I want when I want. But I keep tabs on, like, you know, I'm making sure that I'm getting the things that I need to put in my body, so I'm not just like eating cookies all the time.
For sure.
So I like
that also isn't intuitive eating or isn't healthy, like, or isn't with sex, like having too much sex also isn't healthy. Like I was doing a little bit of research before coming on because I knew we were talking about food and sex, and there's this book about intuitive eating that has 10 principles of intuitive eating, and one of them is to discover the satisfaction factor. And I really liked that thought point because I think that's true with sex, and that like with sex, like if we withhold our sexual urges, maybe we don't masturbate or we don't want to have sex until marriage, which is also fine if that's what you want to do. I think that's beautiful. But if you're withholding it from a place that doesn't come within your deep soul, and so you're restricting something, you're going to also get out of touch with what satisfaction means in your body. And so I thought that this book was really interesting because it's written, I believe, by one of them is a nurse, and so has like this medical background, if not both of them. And so it was interesting because they were talking about how your body can get out of touch with satisfaction. And so if you're going from diet culture to intuitive eating, or even just regular culture, maybe you didn't diet much, but then you're going to try to do intuitive eating or something like that, it takes you a while to even figure out what is satisfaction. What does that mean in my body? How do I feel that? How do I recognize that? And the same is true for sex. Like, that's why I love this topic, because anytime I do research on food, I'm like, the same is true for sex.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
We have this, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I kind of, when I was thinking about this, I kind of saw some of like the similar patterns in like how I developed my relationship with both, with food and sex, because I went through the same thing where I restricted on both.
Yeah.
Or like, or maybe not restricted sex so much, but I didn't put an emphasis on it because I didn't feel like there were times where I'm like, it's not productive to like emphasize sex, or it's not like, I got other things I need to be focusing on. Or when I was on birth control, I just like didn't really have like much of a drive. And so it's like when I kind of took the reins off both and kind of instead listened to my body and listened to the satisfaction that it brought me, but be also like how I felt after, like the quality of the food, the quality of the sex.
Yeah.
Then that's when I was like, oh, this is what I need to be pursuing: quality food that like makes me feel good, quality sex that makes me feel good. And that from there, like the relationships between the two, they're different because I think get more pleasure from sex, but it allowed me to like get to a place with both of them where it was like a healthy place with both.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, like also with regards to sex and like what makes it good or healthy sex, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like so much of sex is poo-pooed on, like it's like not chic and it's not cute.
Yeah.
Like it's sleazy, right? If something, it's such a thin line in our culture between chic and sleazy when it comes to sex or sexy that I think people can be like, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's a sleazy way to be sexual. But it's like, maybe you want to like eat your French fries, but like the sex version, like do it, you know? Like, I think that's an important part. That's why I love intuitive eating, because it like doesn't tell you not to like eat the bad stuff, quote unquote. Like there's,
You want a healthy mix.
For me, the sexual equivalent of fries, because I do love me some fries sometimes. When I'm just like, it's late.
McDonald's, they have the best.
Or In-N-Out. But
yeah.
McDonald's I think are the best. I
Okay,
agree.
Chick-fil-A.
I've
Chick-fil-A is
never
good.
eaten at Chick-fil-A.
Well, I can
Okay.
see why.
Yeah. I get that.
Their
But their
waffle
fries are really good.
Ooh, I mean, if I'm like drunk one time and that's the only thing available, I will get their waffle fries.
That's the only time I go is if I'm really craving their fries. Normally, like if I'm having a fry craving, there are other options. Wendy's, I think, is pretty comparable.
Ooh, Jack in the Box, their curly fries.
Yes. And I was going to say Arby's curly fries.
Ooh.
I haven't been to an Arby's in God knows how long.
I haven't had those in so
But
long.
the curly fries are fire.
Ooh.
Yeah. But I was going to say my equivalent to fries is hentai porn. So when I remember the other day, I sat down to have a wank. And
I love that. What a classy way to talk about sex, Nikki. Good for you.
I'm trying to think of appropriate ways to say stuff so that when I make TikToks, it doesn't.
Oh yeah, TikTok really isn't like
So we don't have to censor ourselves. So I sat down to have a wank, and I went to look for my normal run-of-the-mill lesbian category, right? Yeah. And as they showed an ad for, it was a hentai like porno, and it was what was it? This like purple alien girl, and this girl was going down on her, and they both had like massive penises, and so I was like, absolutely, I need to watch this. So I ran over to the hentai section.
It's so funny because I mean, we were talking in our last episode, which everyone should listen to, about like our cartoon crushes. Yes. I love cartoon penises and cartoon boobs. Yes.
Cartoon boobs.
They're it's amazing. I've never in my life. It's so hot. And then like the cartoon penises, I can't really do a big penis in real life, like owie. Yeah. But then when I'm like watching a cartoon and it's like this giant thing, completely unrealistic, but I'm here for it. It's such a turn on.
Or when they show it like stretching out the kitty and it's like the perfect angle and you're just like, oh my God, this is so hot.
It's really hot.
Who was I showing the other day? But they were like, you watch hentai? And I was like, yeah, have you watched it before? And they were like, no, I never have.
The Tomb Raider one
I sent them a video of it. And I don't know if they got it, but I'm like, just watch the way the boobs bounce, because that's the best part. Yeah. But then it like showed like a monster dick going inside the girl's mouth.
Wait, there's
And
one.
they're
Hold
like,
on.
how do they take that?
I'm gonna
it's
pull-
a cartoon.
That's the beauty
doesn't
of
matter.
it. I love it. And I can't relate as much. I think sometimes when I watch porn with like actual humans, like some parts it isn't as hot
As it would be in
as
hentai.
it is.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I don't know why.
Like the big penises.
Yeah, the
in
big
hentai.
penises. Like
because
if I'm watching it in real life, I'm like, oh
This-
God, I'm
yeah.
nervous for her. Like,
and it looks like she's getting like impaled, and you're like, oh,
and I'm like,
fuck.
oh, I don't
Yeah.
know. But then I mean, the cartoons.
Wait,
they're
I have to show
cartoons.
y'all this. And
Is that my guilty pleasure? Then like my French fries is hentai. I don't know. I don't watch it. I don't watch
need
it.
to-
another
think of
thing
what,
that I
yeah.
really, besides French fries, milkshakes.
Oh.
I actually had a milkshake the other day, and I'm
Me
not gonna lie,
too.
I had a moment where I felt a little halfway through. I'm like, I feel disgusting for eating this, but then I was like, you know what?
Wait, the protein shake we had after the gym.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a proper
what?
milkshake.
Wait, I have to show y'all this porno at
Frothy,
some point, but I will
yummy.
later. But I remember, and this is kind of, I think, an important thing to consider with both food and sex.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a little bit, like that level of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Because I've found when I stop, when I feel happy or when I feel content or fulfilled is when I'm at like the best, like I feel good about what I just ate, or I feel good about the
Yeah.
sex I just have, whatever.
Yeah.
Like if I force it to keep going, like whether
Yeah.
with eating or with
Oof.
sex, then afterwards I'm like, why did I do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
can, I think, hit a point of like glutton almost.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like that's the journey I think that
Yeah.
we're on as adults who like want to enjoy sex and food. Is like, what does satisfaction feel like in my body? What is too much? What is gluttony? Because
Yeah.
I'm like that too. When I'm like on one, and I also love weed, so I get the munchies, right?
Ah,
and so
yeah.
I can like eat and eat and eat, and then I'll just feel horrible because I've just been like a food monster.
Yeah.
Like I've eaten everything.
Yeah.
So, and the same is true for sex. Like when that happens to me in sex, I get what's called poofgina. It's just something that I call it. It's not a medical term.
Yeah.
But it's like when I'm just too swollen or raw, like I've just been doing too much down there, like too much
Yeah.
penetration or anything else. You know, it's just like, but then I kept going.
Yeah. I was going to say the same for
yeah.
me. I remember sometime last year, I can't remember exactly when, but it was 8 men in the span of 4 days. Do the math.
Ooh.
And
You should win a medal.
And I use protection with all of them. Okay.
Proud
and
of
that was part of the thing is that like it was so
Oh,
much.
because there's not as much lubrication too.
And
'cause,
I use lube, but at the same time, like I remember at the end of it, and the reason I had done it was because I don't know what it was. I was so horny. I was like on a rampage. And as soon as I got started, I'm like, I just need to keep going. And then, but then at the end of it, I'm like, I probably could have stopped about 3 people ago and been fine. But I just like had scheduled all of it and I committed to it.
Oh my God, I'm like that.
It's like
too.
when I order food at a restaurant and I
Yeah.
don't want it to go to waste.
Exactly. So you eat it. So you
That
eat
is
it.
a good analogy.
It's true
Oh my
though.
God.
And I had scheduled all these dick appointments, and then by the end of it, I was like, I didn't need to have done that, but I did, and it's fine. Like I wasn't like shaming myself for it. I wasn't like angry with myself, but like I definitely realized I'm like that was past my point of satisfaction, and I could have changed that a bit. So like it was just something like
But
in the
that's
future.
a good thing because that's how you learn. You know, like one of the sad truths about developing boundaries is you develop your boundaries when it's been crossed. That's how you know that a boundary was there. I mean, obviously we probably know like some basic boundaries, but like you recognize like when you're too full or you've eaten too much because you've eaten too much. Like it's like that's how we are. Like my dad would always say growing up, because he's French, so we had wine, and I'm sure with you two being from Argentina it was kind of similar. Like there was wine, there was things in the house. It was definitely not restrictive. It wasn't weird if at like 16 I had a glass of wine with dinner because we were French.
Yeah.
But my dad would always say he would almost encourage me to like drink at the house because one, my parents were there so they could like make sure I was fine. But he was like, you can figure out in a safe environment what's too much. So then when you're at a party, you're not going to get wasted because you just didn't know, you know? And that's what is, I think, really tricky with American culture. Like I remember when I went to college, I was a transfer student. So I was a little bit older, and it was really interesting to see like people drink so much.
Binge drink,
But it's like they didn't know. You don't
Yeah.
know. That's how you figure it out. And so it's
No, that's a great way to look at it, because it's true. A lot of the things that I indulge in, like I understand where where my levels are because like
Yeah.
I've gotten
thrown up one too
Yeah,
many times.
I was gonna say-
which actually in England they call it a tactical chunder, which I think is
Oh,
just
what?
like I had this British friend who is just like a delight to be around, and we were at Six Flags one time, and I don't remember why, but he was like, "I think I have to tactical chunder," and I was like, "What's happening?" And he was like, "I'll talk to you after the bush," and I'm like, "What's happening?" And he like threw up in a bush,
Oh,
and it was
wow.
a tactical chunder. I think he had a little food poisoning or something.
Oh, no.
But that was how I figured that out.
Well, I like how you bring up like the culture aspect of it, because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of times in American culture,
Yeah.
society tells us to restrict
everything.
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
and then that's why
Yeah.
you get called a slut when you have too much sex, or
Yeah.
now you have people that are trying to figure out how to eat in a healthy
Yeah.
way that works for their body, and they don't know how, and that's because
They don't.
like,
They just overeat.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Or
we
alcohol.
just don't. I mean, it's like Catholicism, it's like
Oh,
shame
yeah.
on every corner.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
I went
just
to
put
a
that
Catholic high
together.
school. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was the only, one of two Jews at a Catholic high school. So I saw Catholicism, and it was really, like
Not for me.
not
No
for
offense
me.
to anyone that's Catholic.
No, I mean it's
Yeah.
a big part of my family is, so
Yeah.
love them. But
yeah.
it's funny to think about. But when I work one-on-one with people and coaching, sometimes that'll be like one of the big aha moments that they have, and I'm just like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, I don't think, like, I don't know. It's just so weird because, like, especially, like, I remember when I was a waitress, and a lot of the times, like, parents would order their kids, like, this giant plate.
oh yeah,
And then, then they'd sit there and be like, no, you need to finish it, right? And I would just look at that and I'd be like, why are we pushing for it? Like, if the kid's fine, like, don't.
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know. So it's like it's a weird thing. Like, restrict and then push and then
yeah. Oh,
I don't
absolutely.
know. It gets. I was thinking a lot of what the cultural reference made me think a lot of like college and seeing. Yeah.
I definitely
yeah.
wonder if like availability to either like food or sex also affects that. Or like lack of one then compensates like with the other.
Yeah.
I can't remember who I had. Oh, it was one of the guys that I had asked food or sex, and he was like, sometimes sex isn't available to everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's
so
definitely
true.
a factor to take into account. Or
Yeah.
sometimes food isn't available to
Yeah.
everyone. So then it's like, the relationship changes, and so then you look for those pleasure, satisfy that pleasure,
Yeah.
or fulfill all of that in another place. So then it's like you never really develop the other.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's something I
That's
thought of
another
as well.
thing to think about.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like processing so much right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's so many different avenues I want to.
Yeah.
I'll think about this
Absolutely.
later as well. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that I don't want to say that you can make both available, but if they say like for for guys, for example, like they have a harder time finding like sex or whatever, and I don't think that's quite true anymore. But so then is that why most of the guys said food? I don't know.
Maybe. It's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking of people who just grew up in religious backgrounds and so like didn't either feel comfortable to have sex or only had like got married but the sex isn't very good or whatnot. And so I think there's a lot of, or you don't even need to be that religious to get married and believe in monogamy and not really have sex be that good and not really know what to do about it.
Yeah.
So I think there are tons of ways where sex can not always be available. And if that's a part of your journey, then like it's okay to just sort of accept that that's where things are at right now. And remember that everything is always moving. Everything is temporary. Everything is evolving. So if you're going through a rough patch sexually or you feel like there aren't options, that's temporary.
Yeah.
And options will come in. Like momentum happens from like life is so weird. You never know what'll bring momentum into your sex life or into your romantic life.
Yeah.
So that can just be something to sit and accept in your life at that moment and explore.
Well, I like that you brought up earlier, like masturbation too.
Yeah.
Because for me, like, I mean, I've talked about it before. I had a little addiction for a little bit during college. And then every single time I tried to like quit cold turkey, like, it just did not work.
Quit masturbation?
Yeah. Well, because I felt ashamed that I did it so often. And then I was trying to find a healthy relationship with it. But then And like I wasn't really treating it that well. And so I mean, even if like sex isn't available to you, there's also the other side, like
masturbation
and you know, having that relationship be something good as well, like in your pleasure.
That's true, because that is its own relationship.
It really is its own relationship. And but it's funny. I am one of the people who don't necessarily believe in sex addiction or things like that. I think there's a totally different way to view it. And it's also when it comes to addiction in general, like the system we have, which is free, right? Like AA and those systems are free, which is incredible, but they also only work like 12% of the time. And so according to the latest research, so like when we think about like addiction and then specifically sex addiction, I mean, that's a whole other topic, but there's like Dr. David Ley wrote a great book on it. So look into that, anybody listening. But there's a lot of other academics out there who are like, I don't know that sex addiction is the right way to label like being really assertive about like sex with yourself or sex with others, you know? But I love masturbation. Like there was a time when a few years ago when everybody that I dated, I like couldn't get satisfaction from them. Like it was just the sex wasn't really good. And it was like nice in the sense that I was getting connection, but masturbation was like, I mean, truly like 10 times better every single time. And I started to get frustrated and like angry because I was like, why can't it be as good with a partner? And I think one of the things that really helped me when I was also thinking about masturbation in that way was like, these are two different ways to have sex. And like partnered sex is so different from masturbation. And masturbation can be so hot because like we know exactly where to go and what to think and body-mind connection is so important when it comes to sexual satisfaction. So in masturbation, you're connected to your body and your mind. And obviously sometimes we could feel disconnected from masturbation, but that can be why masturbation is just like its own type of sexual pleasure. And then partnered sex is a totally different type of sexual pleasure because you're having to teach someone in real time how to connect to your body. Meanwhile, you're in control of your brain being like, don't think about the grocery list. Like it's fine, you know? And so I think that's normal. And I love masturbation.
No, I do too.
I love it now. And I'm finally at a place where like I have a great relationship with it.
I was going to ask, how is your relationship with masturbation? I don't know personally, so that's why I wanted to.
So, I mean,
because I feel like I masturbate more than you. So, but I don't know. Like, I don't
know how often you do it. But for me, it's like it goes back to, you know, like sex versus food. Like it depends on my mood.
Yeah.
Some days, you know, I'm having a wank, you know, every day. Or, you know, like maybe like first thing when I wake up and when I go to bed. And then other times it's like, you know, I could go like 2-3 weeks without it, but I'm fine.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Totally.
Wait, and I wanted to ask.
Wait, hold on. I really, before we move on from this, don't forget your question. But I was going to say, I really had an aha moment when you said that in masturbation, you already have the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why, but that just like immediately clicked for me. And I'm like, that makes so much sense because I'm already in my mental space.
Yeah.
I know how to get my body there and fast because at this point I know my body. Yeah. So it's like someone doesn't have to figure, like my mental state is there. I go to exactly the things that help get my mental state there. So like whether that's porn, whether that's a fantasy that I'm wanting to live out or like a memory that I'm, you know, kind of reliving. And then from there, it's pretty easy to get my body there. And so like, that's why A, masturbation tends to be a lot quicker, but B, also, I feel like it's just so much more, like, I feel like I really relax and really like kind of dive into it where sometimes like with sex, it's not the same. And like that just answered that for me.
Totally.
So, thank
and
you.
Also like, I loved what you said because so many people think that masturbation can be cheating in their relationships. And like that, what you just said, I think is such a good reminder as to why it's not cheating. And like, you do need to nourish and connect to yourself. Having fantasies isn't cheating. Like it's a part of the way that we can heal childhood trauma, you know? So, but what were you going to ask, Cam?
Okay, so my question, you mentioned how scholars say, you know, like you shouldn't use the word sex addiction. There's other ways to like define it and like heal it. Yeah. Would you say that like those ways to fix a sex addiction, or let's just say, you know, maybe overindulgence, however you want to word that, would you say you can use like the similar ways to also like help if you're struggling with your relationship with food?
I think you could. And I also think it's important to talk to someone who's like a therapist and work through that as well. Like have as many professionals in your corner who specialize in this topic as you can, because it is also extremely difficult with food and sex being so available, whatever you're overindulging in. It's very difficult to kind of just completely by yourself, like get on a better track and feel healthy with that. So I would say look into specialists, get help from a therapist as well. But I totally think you could. And it's why I really love the scholarship on intuitive eating, because I think when we apply some of those principles to pleasure and sex, they actually overlap in really empowering ways. And I don't think that shame helps us, and it's easy to feel shame when you overindulge in any type of pleasure. And I don't think restriction helps us, because studies just literally show that it doesn't. So, and you also can't undo desire. So when we're thinking specifically of sex, you can repress your desires, but those things still need, orgasm is a release. Your like there's a reason why our bodies are hardwired this way.
Yeah. Same goes for food.
Yeah.
You can restrict as much as you want, but like your body's still going to be like, we're hungry.
Yeah. And we need food.
And we're going to make noises until you feed us.
Yeah.
Like,
Or you're just going to keep thinking about, that pie that you want all the time.
That's why, I agree that like restriction has not worked for me. So like I have stopped restricting myself on both food and sex. And I feel like I'm just a much happier person now.
Yeah.
But on top of that, like I said, it's just, I feel like it's made like the quality of like the relationships with both go up, because then I seek more quality. So sometimes I know I'm like, okay, I could go for, something like quick that's in the pantry, and like it's going to be like a quick fix, but it's not really going to like fill me up. Or I could take a little bit more time, make something, be a little bit more fulfilled with it, and then I'll be good to go. So like it's helped me kind of like with both. You same with like, okay, I could just meet a dude off Bumble and just go have sex and it's fine. Or I could actually like, build a little bit more of a connection, even if it's like, casual, give it more time to like get to know the person and everything. And then, the sex is probably better. So like, and it's fine to have both. Yeah. I think if you need that quick fix sometimes, like there's nothing wrong with it.
And again, that's how you learn. So it's like, I think getting to a point too where you can understand satisfaction in this way, it takes a lot of deep work. So anybody who's listening, and if you're struggling, it can take a few years. That's okay. And that's why I said earlier, like, it's okay to just like accept that you're not experiencing as much pleasure as you want right now. That can be the first step towards just feeling a little bit better.
Identifying it. Yeah. And then acknowledging like, okay, sometimes I do want that quick fix. Sometimes I do want more quality. Sometimes I think identifying the need, so then you understand why you're going for that food or that sex. Like then you're like, okay, this is why I'm doing it. Move forward, continue. Rather than like, you know what, I think I want this, but instead I'm going to go for this. And then you go that route, and then afterwards you're like, I really wanted that, but I didn't give it to myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like, and that goes, and I think that's the same for like both sex and food. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Oprah said once that if you, in terms of food specifically, if you're craving a food and you just try to find a different avenue to crave it, like you want Cheetos, but they're so unhealthy, so you do the healthy Cheetos, you won't satisfy the craving until you actually eat the thing you're craving. And so it's actually healthier to eat your craving because you're going to just try to substitute, and that's not going to work, and it's going to deny you pleasure.
I will say that this whole conversation has me thinking we're all looking at it from the perspective of non-monogamy, where you can indulge in, a quick fix, or, you go to your primary partner and have sex. Like you can have both, right? Or like, oh, I'm craving women. I remember I was telling one of my partners, we were walking along the beach sometime last week, and later that night I was going to go to a sex party, and I'm like, I haven't been with a woman in a decent amount of time. And so like just one-on-one, because he and I like to tag team dudes together. Yeah. So anyways, and I was like, I've just been like craving women, and lo and behold, that night I had like a wonderful experience with this girl. It was so hot. She was everything. I still masturbate to that whole thing. But I just remember I'm like, that was a craving, and like I was able to like, and not to like objectify her at all, because like that wasn't it. I just like, I miss the connection with a woman. I miss like the softness of a woman. I miss the, like boobs and all of that. Like I miss those things. And so I was really happy to connect with her. Anyways. And so, and yeah, but I had the ability to enjoy that because I am non-monogamous. Like I can see how, like, you know, maybe if we bring it under the lens of monogamy, that looks a little bit different. Yeah. But I still think there are ways to like indulge differently even within monogamy.
Absolutely. Because if you like monogamy, you're doing what you like.
Yeah.
So right up off the bat, you're doing something pleasurable for you.
Yeah.
And then the question is, how do we find, like, is it renting like a private sex room or a hotel? Like, is it really getting in touch with myself and masturbation and like honoring that part of myself? Like, because even if you're monogamous, you're in an open relationship because you're in a relationship with yourself and someone else. So there's multiple people here, and we need to honor our self-partnership as much as our co-partnership, or else there's going to be blocks in the co-partnership, you know? So
that's, it does kind of bring it back to what you were saying earlier about like the cheating thing and how a lot of women,
that's what I was going to ask.
Well, no, I shouldn't say just women, because like there probably are men too, but like a lot of people that will look at masturbation, especially looking at porn, as a form of cheating. Yeah. And that's something that I really struggle with because I highly disagree with it. I remember a friend of mine came to me once. She was like, oh my God, I caught my boyfriend, you know, masturbating to porn in the shower, and I was so upset. Why didn't he come to me? And like, I tried my best to be like empathetic, but at the same time, like it was hard for me to be that way because I'm like, that's just a moment he was having with himself. Yeah. And it's like, it's his relationship with his body. It's his relationship.
That existed before her. So that's the other thing about like relationships. I think there's this unrealistic expectation of, oh, I'm going to come, like once I fall in love, they're going to be my everything. And that every other experience you had as a sexual being before you fell in love with this person is not going to be needed anymore. How could that be real? That's not realistic, right? But then it's like there's so much shame around sex, and I think a lot of guys don't tell their girls if they go to strip clubs or if they watch porn because they like women will feel some sort of way about it, which I also understand because it's a very patriarchal system that, you know, like it's not like you as a maybe cisgendered hetero woman go to a strip club and like that's not pleasure for you necessarily, you know, like that's for your man. So I can see how it like there's like this unevenness underneath the surface of like, well, he can get an outlet. Like I don't really have a strip club to go to that I'd even want to go to. And so then I think that also kind of on an unspoken level adds salt to the wound. Yeah. Because it's like if he wants to go out and do something, he does have avenues because we live in a world that caters to men.
Absolutely.
And so it's just, it's a whole mess. But I do think, you know, strippers, they don't want to steal your man. They
want his money,
want
and that's
that
it.
bag and that's it. Which,
so if you're mad at your man for spending money he should have been saving or something else, that's fine. But you know, like
Well, I mean, and that's why like I hate the topic of like, oh, is masturbation cheating? It's like they're really some people start masturbating, you know, when they're teenagers. It's like
or before that, 10 years old.
And then you expect them to, like just you said earlier, like stop that relationship with themselves. You know, when they come to find a partner, it's like
chances are they know they know the exact spot. And I don't know how long you've been in that relationship with them, but you don't yet. So let them continue to go after that one spot because they know it. They know their body.
Absolutely.
One of our friends, his friend, had reached out to me one time, and he was like, "Hey, can I get your opinion on something?" I was like, "Sure." And he was like, "What's your opinion on men watching porn?" I was like, "I think it's fine. Like, what's wrong?" And he was like, "Well, that's the reason my girlfriend and I just broke up." And I was like, I was like, okay, it was an annoying. I was like, I know where this is going. I was like, so what happened? And he was like, well, I was watching a lot of porn. And I was like, well, did you negotiate with her that that's what you wanted to do? Like you told her like, hey, you know, I like to watch porn. And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, so the porn wasn't the issue. You just didn't communicate. Yeah. Like, let's get that.
Because that's also true. Because that is like, it does feel hurtful. And I also think, again, like, it's not like the other partner really is probably going to be watching a lot of porn. Porn isn't usually made for like women or queer people or, you know, so it's like,
unless it's, you know, like, I think the ethical stuff coming out is so much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, I think it's important to, like, especially for people who are, you know, starting relationships, like talk about masturbation too.
Yeah.
That's a big
I think that's really important. Like when I was with my ex-fiance, the first 2 years, we didn't really discuss it much. And I was, you know, and I was always under the assumption like, oh, you know, now he's going to be the one pleasuring me. So like I try not to watch porn. And, you know, I already had a difficult time with it in college. And I would just... I would restrict myself for a little bit. And then finally, like, we had a conversation about it. And I was like, I don't care if you watch it. And he was like, oh, well, I don't care if you watch it. And I was like, great. So those 2 years I did it for nothing.
But see, and that's the other thing. It's like we'll get into the relationship and restrict ourselves. So like our partner may not even expect us to like stop watching porn or stop masturbating. But then it's like this weird expectation we have about like love and sex and pleasure.
Yeah. And check in because those things can change. I remember at the beginning of my marriage, I told my husband, I was like, you are not going to a strip club. 2 3 years in, I'm like, I don't give a fuck what you do. Go to a strip club. So like those things can change. Like talk about it too, because like your mindset changes, you grow, you mature, like those things. But yeah, it's just funny, like as I'm thinking about all of this, it's like it's not like we go tell our partner like don't eat that dessert, or maybe you do.
Actually, sometimes that happens too.
That's true. Actually, maybe they do.
You have those relationships where people are like, oh, you shouldn't be eating that, and I was like
restricting your partner's pleasure. I think it doesn't help anybody.
Backfires.
It doesn't help anybody. And so I would never, granted, I have very liberal views on relationships and monogamy, but I just, I don't know. I wouldn't want my partner. I wouldn't want to be restricting my partner in any way. And hopefully they wouldn't be restricting me,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I understand that, like, definitely, like in non-monogamy, there are boundaries and such.
Oh, there have to be. That's how any relationship has to work.
But at the same time, it's like, the boundary shouldn't be in place to like restrict, like their, how do I want to word that? Like it shouldn't be to restrict something. It should be to like, okay, kind of, maintain within. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like
be on the same page, honor the connection and like the purpose of the connection. And
like it shouldn't be like you can only have, sex once a week. Yeah. I feel like that's not going to ever, then someone's going to be like, well, I want to have sex twice a week. And you're not letting me have sex twice a week. And I'm like, all I can think about is sex twice a week. Like that's not what a boundary should look like, in my opinion. Yeah. But I don't know.
It's like when I want ice cream multiple times a week. Well, like this week, for example, I'm about to start my period. I was like, and I've been craving ice cream, and I've had it like I think 3 times in the past like 5 days.
The teal phase is no joke.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so true. I was literally just thinking that, like, when I am about to start my period, the food situation, like, all rules are different. Everything is different.
Yeah. Chocolate is like the number 1 ingredient in everything. All of it.
I'm curious because I know you've said before that you have your clients journal about food when they're thinking about their pleasure or like maybe sex. And like, I'm curious, what are some of the things that like you see a lot of times, like some of the trends in that, or not trends, but like, I don't know, things that tend to come up often. I'm curious.
I think one of the biggest things is people not eating when they're hungry. Like people can recognize that they're hungry and they don't eat. And so that's one of the biggest ones, because if you train yourself not to eat when you are hungry, you can also train yourself not to respond, like train your body not to respond to other desires. Because eating food is a pleasure and it's a need. And sex can also, if we're not having sex with ourselves or with others, it can turn into a need that you'll feel, right? And so that's one of the biggest things that I see is people not eating when they're hungry. And then also just so much stuff with body image, because eating psychologically has a feeling, and sometimes it can literally just feel like I am fat, like the actual act of eating. And so it's really interesting, and it definitely is something that like it gets specific with each person. But I would say it either starts with a deep connection to body image issues, and then a deep connection to like understanding your body's cues and suppressing them, and feeling like you get a gold star for saying no and withholding.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about discipline. It's like I think it's a very fine line, because at what point are you disciplining so much that you're denying your body things that it's like constantly asking you for, versus like, finding the right balance in it and being like, okay, I can discipline myself about like this much, but like the rest of the way I need to give myself the space to like move within that amount, whatever that looks like. Totally. I hadn't really thought about how like maybe food can like affect sex in the way that like if you feel like you eat a lot and you feel fat, you feel bloated,
then you're not gonna
you're not gonna want to have sex. So then it's like, because I think about the times that I feel super bloated, and then I'm like, the last thing I want to go do right now is fuck someone.
Absolutely.
I hadn't even thought about that until now. So there can be a correlation between the two.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
it's like when we went to that sex party the other day, and
what do you mean?
When we got back from Europe, I was feeling bloated as hell. And I was like, I don't want to go to a sex party. I don't feel sexy. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go.
I'm trying to remember what you wore. Plus, we wore dresses anyways.
Well, I already explained it. I wore a blush bodysuit. I did exactly like that. And then like a blush skirt with a slit.
I remember. Okay. So food versus sex.
Yeah.
Can we go into that?
Let's
or have
do
we?
it.
What,
I mean,
explain.
we kind of did a little bit, but I'll say my girlfriend, when I asked her, I was like, okay, food versus sex. And she's like, who is cleaning the sheets? That was her like immediate response. And she was just, and I was like, wait, I don't know. And she was like, if we're going to add food, and then she immediately thought I was talking about adding food to sex. And she's like, strawberries will stain the sheets and this, that. And I was just like, and to be fair, she is usually the one who cleans the sheets. So I think it was just like a funny like reflection and mirror for me to see into like how my partner thinks about like sex sometimes, and like, okay, well, depending on what we're doing, who's washing the sheets and when.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's hilarious.
Okay.
No, but it just made me think that there's kind of like the process before and after both.
Yeah.
You know, with like food, you cook, and then afterwards someone's got to do the dishes. And in a lot of couples, you know, someone will cook and the other will do the dishes, right? And then in sex, like you both kind of have to like prepare yourself. And then after, like there's the whole cleanup, like, you know, someone's got to go get the cum rag to wipe it off your stomach.
Yeah.
You know, it's never me. I lay there and wait for it.
Oh my God. One of my like things that I love to do is like wipe the cum off of a vagina and just like clean it up after.
Wait,
I
like with your hand or like with
no, with
like
a
towel?
nice little
Okay.
like towel or a nice wet wipe or something, ideally warmed if I can, but like because I like making it wet and then being like and then cleaning it up and being like
I love that. That's so
I
cute.
did a thing today.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. Oh,
Here's your gold star.
Yeah. One of my pleasures.
It reminds me, the other day I had sex with one of my partners, and then afterwards, like he was kind of laying there because he ended up like coming all over his stomach, and he was about to get up, and I was like, wait, stop. And he was like, what, something wrong? And I just like, I was like, I don't know why, but like the way his cum looked, it was so hot. So I started just like dipping my finger in it and like licking it. And he was watching me, and he's like, what are you doing? And then he was like, that is the sexiest thing I'd ever seen. And I'm like, it just looks really good.
Yeah.
So I wanted to
It's
enjoy
too
it.
salty for me to want to do that.
Oh, but cum is different.
Well, I mean,
For everyone.
okay, the cum I've had recently is too salty.
The
Like, no
taste.
thanks.
Maybe they just had
Oh,
sushi.
wait. Food affects your cum.
the way. Yeah.
Do you know
It
anything
can.
about that?
I know that there's like the myth about pineapple and
Yeah.
it can make your cum taste a little bit different.
Tomato juice is another one.
Yeah, I think most of them are myths, to be honest, like with very light scientific evidence that proves them right. But I also think like we can really do a lot with what we put into our bodies, with what we eat and what we drink. So you absolutely can change the taste of things going on down there based on your diet. But I do think that like if you were like, I'm just going to eat a ton of pineapple and like my pussy's going to taste different, it might not be that immediate. Your body needs to process things a lot.
It's not going to be that
So I
that
think
night.
it's more so like your long-term diet can have an effect. I notice though, like if I drink a coffee, my pee smells different.
Oh,
Yeah.
Or if you eat asparagus, I've noticed my pee smells different after that.
Yeah.
I think what I've noticed the most after tasting a variety of cum is that the people with like, or the men that I know have a little bit healthier diets, like less alcohol specifically, less alcohol, better tasting cum.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I remember one of my hookups, whatever, anyways, he like finished in my mouth, and he had just like binge drank like all weekend, and I was like, this tastes terrible.
That is
And then I noticed
fascinating.
another time, like, someone else that had been drinking a lot. So I've noticed at least like the people that drink a lot of alcohol, it affects the taste of their cum.
Yeah, interesting. I wish I knew I like feel like I'm not as in tune with the cums. I just like know what I like, and then I don't actually know that I've ever had any secretion I don't like yet. Like, but none stands out as like that tasted bad. So that's nice for all my lovers.
Wait, does that?
I'm gonna have to think about it.
Yeah.
I have had some partners who have had really like salty cum.
But I've also had some partners who have really nice cum, and it like tastes
Yeah,
so good.
sometimes it
like the one
doesn't-
that I was like, it looked really good, and so then I put it in my mouth, and I'm like, this tastes delicious, and I was like literally like lapping it up.
Maybe that was intuitive eating.
Yeah.
Your body was like, I see this and I know.
It's gonna be good.
I one time had a guy. He went down on me, and then he went up to kiss me, and he was like, "Oh, you taste good." And
Did you taste yourself? Was it good?
well, no, and well, I kind of did, and he was like, "Do you want to taste it again?" And I think I was just like really turned on, and I was like, "Yes." And he dipped his fingers in my vagina and then put them in my mouth.
Nice.
And it was actually one of the hottest things someone's ever done.
I love to kiss the guy after he's gone down on me because I like the way I taste.
Oh, me too.
Well, and
yeah.
I was like, I was kind of like admiring it. I was like, you know what? I do taste good. Like
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's not bad.
It's
like,
a great feeling.
yeah. Well, it's
Absolutely.
one of the things you want to hear is that you taste good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I get that, it's a gold star.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that wraps up everything I
Yeah.
had. This was a wonderful conversation, Nadege. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Plug yourselves. Where can people find you?
You can find me at Pleasure Science on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to learn more about yourself, I have this great mindful sex quiz that you could download for free.
Ooh.
So you could go to my Instagram page, click the link in my bio. But also just go to pleasurescience.com if you're interested in learning more about sex. I write articles, and then I also do sextrology readings.
Yes.
So,
mine
yeah.
was amazing. Highly recommend.
yeah.
I was gonna say
Highly
I
recommend.
heard you and Nikki's sextrology reading, and I was
And it
like, I
was
need a book.
fire.
Oh my
ASAP.
God,
it
I
was
love it.
so good.
That always
Yeah.
makes me feel happy people really love it because astrology just goes into your birth chart and there's specific places you could look for sex. So it's really cool. But it's always so nice to hear that people like have a good time because I'm just a nerd. So I love learning about people and what helps them and all the things. But anyway, at Pleasure Science, and we could talk
yeah.
forever. We're so bad.
I know.
I was gonna say like everybody go book a
Your sextrology reading.
with Nadege
Highly recommend.
because 10
Worth
out of
every
10.
penny.
I haven't even done one yet, but I listen in on Nikki's.
Well, and you're
And-
twins.
Exactly.
So
I was
there's
like,
this
how does this apply to
overlap.
me? I was
There's
like,
overlap there.
yes,
Yeah.
but it was amazing. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Don't forget, wear condoms. and-
DoubleTeenPodcast.com.
Yeah.
We've got a live show October 20th. Check it out on our website.
I'm going to be there. Please come.
Yes. Love
Okay,
you, bye.
we love you. Bye.